Carla has never sung in public before. And I was saying before the service that she could tell her parents, and then I decided it was really her grandparents, that she debuted on a stage. That was beautiful. Thank you, ladies. So the angels proclaim peace on earth when Jesus was born, right? And today we wonder as we listen to the news and we make our way through the world, is peace really, is it really possible? We do, each and every one of us, wish for a sense of peace on earth, but what really is that and what does that look like? So today at the Garden, we're going to talk about peace. We're going to look at deep peace. What is deep peace? We're going to look at living life with daily peace, and then, of course, world peace. We have 3 different texts throughout the Bible. These aren't the only texts. Throughout the Bible, there is a born to us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Then Jesus, so this is before he's born, and then when he ascends back into heaven, his parting words to his disciples and those who have gathered for his ascension, he leaves us peace again. Jesus says, "All this I have spoken to you while still with you, but the advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything I have said." The last text is when Jesus is born, and it's what the angels proclaim. Let's go ahead and say it together. Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests. Those are lovely texts, aren't they? If you take the word peace and you put it into your Google text or whatever, you would be amazed at the number of times peace comes up in the Bible. I encourage you to just do that in your spare time because it's kind of interesting. Well, today our clip, we're going to, throughout Advent, we're going to take a look at the movie It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life has been deemed the Christmas carol of the United States, right? So the clip today is one, if you know the movie, that involves Zuzu's petals, where George gets Zuzu's petals. Now he finds himself, before he enters into Zuzu's room, in a rough situation. Do you remember this? He's in a chaotic state. He's in the midst of financial ruin, and he comes home to discover that Zuzu had to come home sick from school. And why? Because she had to leave her coat open because the teacher gave her a beautiful flower, and she did not want to ruin that flower. And so in the way home, she ends up picking up a sniffle and having a little fever, and she has to go to bed and get some rest, because rest some rest. He needs some peace in his own life. And kind of like God to us, Zuzu's father, wants nothing more than for her to be okay and to experience a sense of rest. He is in turmoil, fear, distress, worry, and frustration because his life is not going as he had planned it. And his best laid plans are ending up, well, like these loose petals on the ground, and he doesn't have peace. Keep that in mind as you watch this clip.
Hi, Daddy.
If you read any of the biographical works of Jimmy Stewart, he says this role is the role that not only changed his acting career, but changed his life. It absolutely changed his life. And he said in all of his living, minus his children, it is the greatest accomplishment that he has had, was playing the part of George Bailey. Now, if you recall, I don't know if you know this or not, but it didn't do really well at the box office at the time. In fact, it really didn't find its popularity in just the last 20 years and kind of becoming a hit for us. But for him, he always said, perhaps it didn't have that kind of success. Life. If you recall, he's sitting in Martini's bar and he ends up just praying to God in absolute desperation. Do you remember it? He says, God, dear Father in heaven, I'm at the end of my rope. Show me the way. He said, in that moment, God did something in his life. Here they are recording this movie, filming this movie, and God impacts George's life and Jimmy Stewart's life in a way where he said, I suddenly saw it. I suddenly felt loneliness of the people who had nowhere to turn. He suddenly felt that desperation, and he suddenly felt that sense of need, and he said, quite planned that way. It was going to be a little angrier, but he ended up sobbing. It was not planned, but he believes in that moment, the power of prayer changed his life. In his realization that God in heaven is there to help us, to help the hopeless, and what it did was it reduced him to tears. I'm curious if you can relate. Have you ever had an experience in your life where you realize that there is hopelessness in your own life and in this world, and you don't know what else to do, and you fall to your knees and you pray, and then you experience the presence of God? That panic, that despair, that anger, and finally just surrendering a heap on the floor. But then, when you do that, when you say, I am no longer in control, something powerful can happen. God's peace can enter your life in a profound way, and I wish I could say I totally and completely understand it, but much like Jimmy Stewart, in those situations, I can't. But it was when I gave up control of the situation and of my life that God finally stepped in, or I let God finally step in, and I experienced peace. I saw it happen in the hospital some years ago. The hospital and discover that this loved one was not only in critical condition, but he then did die. I watched as this person, who I believe was probably his mother, knew nothing else but to do, but she fell to her knees. She totally lost it all and fell to her knees in despair with this moan like I had never heard before. And the other family members that had gathered around, it was clear that she had somehow captured what they were all feeling. That feeling that you can't explain, that's inaccessible in the regular moments of life. But when you clearly know, I am not in control here, and you can do nothing else but fall to the hours that followed, while they waited for other family members to arrive, while they decided what was next, what they needed to do. It was amazing to see how her experience translated into the others that were in the room. She was able to express those feelings in such a way that the family found some acceptance of the situations, found that they needed one another more than they ever had before, and found a peace at a time when there is no peace that passes all understanding, that peace that Jesus talks about. There is a peace available to all of us, a peace that we 9 months was not going to be the life that she had planned because this child would not live. When she remained in the hospital for a day or two, it was fascinating to watch how that moan became a realization that this is how life is now. And there was even a sense of peace. I can't quite explain it as she prepared to go home. It's that feeling that a family has when an addict finally gives up and falls to their knees, either literally or figuratively, and says, I can't do it anymore and I need treatment. It's that anymore. Now, no, these are 3 situations, and I know not every situation in life works that way. I know that there are times in life when this peace does not enter in so immediately. But I do want to say that if you find yourself in that circumstance, if today you feel hopeless about a particular situation, perhaps if you fall to your knees, perhaps if you admit you do not have these answers, God will grant to you that peace that passes all understanding. Inner peace can most often happen when we let go and we let God. As I've said, I've witnessed it and I've experienced it in my own personal life. And there is something profound in falling to your knees, having to accept a situation and turning it all over to God. I would say then and only then does that deep peace come. And it is a deep peace that cannot be explained, that comes from God alone. Another peace we're talking about today is peace in daily living. It's needed in our world today, isn't it? Because we live in a non-stop world 24 hours a day. Back in my day, I remember a time when you had 3 television stations to choose from. Back in my day, I remember when you couldn't shop on Sunday because the stores were closed. You had to get to the store before 9 o'clock because the store closed. I remember back in the day when going out to eat was a really big deal. And it only happened every once in a while. Oh, I remember those beautiful, peaceful, amazing days back in my day. That was a time of peace. That's at your mind to process life as it is rather than how you think it should be. Okay, boomer, it's time for me to just accept that life is the way it is today and get my mind to process around how it is today. So, finding peace for me today is not only a matter of my faith, but recognizing that the world doesn't always function on that faith basis, where back in my day, everybody went to church on Sunday morning. It functions differently now. So I went to where most people would go. But my friends, is that a lot of it, though not spoken such, is about faith and is about accepting life and accepting love. The first thing they say in Psychology Today in order to find peace in life is to set limits. If your life is overfilled, you may need some limits. So stop doing some of the least important things in life, the things that honestly don't matter much. Set limits on the time you check your inboxes, your Instagram, your Twitter, your Facebook, and say no if you really don't have the time, and it will not be an action that benefits you. It's harder to do. If you get to do something, then that feels a little lighter, doesn't it? If I have to go Christmas shopping, ooh, I don't want to go do that, right? I fight against that. But if I get to go Christmas shopping, I seem a little obsessed with shopping and traffic these days, don't I? If I get to share the love I have for others through purchasing gifts, then that's different. So be mindful of the language, the have language and the get language. The second thing Psychology Today recommends is find a relaxation technique that works for you. And I loved this. The first thing they start with is yoga. Yeah, right. But then they go to work it into the schedule so that you know you have time to simply relax, or else you're definitely going to just run out of energy. Plan an escape, pick up a novel. While shopping, just pause, sit, and watch some kids. The third thing they recommend is not making mountains out of molehills. We can often find a state of peace when we create this unnecessary stress in our lives. When facing what looks to be a mountain, ask yourself, will this really matter in 5 years? Is what's happening here really going to make a difference in the world? God has called us to be in the midst of life. They go on to suggest you unclutter your world, you unclutter your mind. And this is what I really like. They say do it 3 minutes at a time. Don't make it bigger than it has to be. Do it one table at a time. Do it one desk at a time. And do it with your brain too. Unclutter your brain. I kind of really liked this activity. They suggest that oftentimes we're the ones who end up having these problems become bigger in our head because we never really name them and claim them. They say, go ahead and commit to dealing with whatever problem you have sitting back there. Then you don't have to carry it around anymore. Guess what? I don't think you need a box. I just go ahead and give it to God. God, I can deal with this problem, this situation, this difficulty right now, but these I can't. So will you hold those? And guess what? God will. Accept and let go. Be ready and there 10 minutes early, Becky Cheatham. Be there and ready to go 10 minutes early. They recommend all these things. And to be honest with you, guess what? It works. I am married to a man who, if you're at the airport 3.5 hours early, it's a little late, right? But what happens when you do that? It gives you time to prepare for your trip. Start this adventure together. I love this. They say, ask instead of guessing. We are in the reading minds business in the world today. We're so busy, we don't have time for a real conversation. Well, come on, that's crazy, right? Let's just sit down and have real conversations, have direct conversations. And when you do that, somehow it clears anxiety, uncertainty, and all these misguided, unknown conclusions, like where are we going to be for Christmas Eve or what's happening. It changes dramatically because you know, and that's what matters. As I said before, be there early, don't solve your problems in the moment. If you can't, prayer. In the time that you feel that anxiety coming on, just pause. Be still and know God. Be still and seek to know the presence of God in the busyness of the season, in the busyness of the day. Know the love of God. And as always, remember, you're not alone. In the most challenging times in life, in the joyous times of life, God is walking with you. That's what you learn in the movie It's a Wonderful Life. You learn that God is with George throughout the whole experience. It looks like a guy named Clarence, who, if that's what God looks like, I think that's fantastic. My friends, is what daily peace looks like. The final piece we said we were going to work on today was world peace, and we'll have that all tied up here in the next 3 minutes or so. Actually, there's an amazing story about a man named Jeremy Gilley. He was an actor who decided, like most actors, to do something else because you can never make enough money. He became a documentary filmmaker. And for years, he asked himself this fundamental question. He was British. He asked himself this fundamental question is, where is the starting point for peace? And that was an idea that kind of transformed his life. He wanted to find the starting point for peace. He wanted to for there to be some kind of international cultural cooperation day. So in 1999, he started a campaign to start a one-day peace movement. One-day peace. He started writing different world leaders. He started writing different people to try to get people engaged. And what's so interesting is the last time we talked about somebody who decided to write world leaders, when you have a good idea, they tend to respond. They responded and they said, you know, Jeremy, this is a pretty good idea. So then he had to figure out when. So he decided the day for peace should be September 21st. And why did he decide that? He decided Nagasaki when the bomb was dropped. He went there with 700 men. Only 23 came back. 2 died on the boat on the way home, and 21 returned home. And that's why he decided that September 21st should be the day of peace. I said he connected with world leaders. I mean, this guy connected with the Dalai Lama and Nelson Mandela and NGOs and faith leaders and rock stars and CEOs and all kinds of actors, and people had a lot of energy around it. So a couple years went by, and in those 2 years, about what peace meant to people. Kids, he said, mostly younger people, sharing their views on peace through their art, their poetry, their literature, their music, their ideas. He said it was an amazing couple of years. And so 2 years into it, he finally, on the 7th of September, was invited to New York City to present to the UN an International Day of Peace. It was the first ever ceasefire, nonviolence day, a call to peace. One day where unanimously everyone in the UN adopted this idea. And as Jeremy says, it was one of the Kofi Annan, and it was at 8 o'clock on September 11th, 2001. Kofi Annan never made it down. World leaders were sent out of the country into different places pretty dramatically as the United States participated in the first terrorist act to hit this country so dramatically. It seems to me to be a really good example of how peace truly works, right? that there is always in this conditional world terror, not only in here and here, but worldwide on a regular basis. Terror is part of this conditional world. Figure out what was going next, because the campaign that they had planned to get this going in the world, well, that wasn't going to work now. And so he had to go back to some grassroots ideas. And he had to see how peace really unfolds. It doesn't unfold in a big bang on one day. It unfolds one conversation at a time, one moment at a time. It unfolds kind of like a flower, like Zuzu's petals. Sometimes efforts take hold and bloom and blossom. Other times, they just fall off. Jeremy Gilley didn't get the flash and the promotion he expected. Plan for September 21st, 2020. It has been happening, though, in the Congo, in Sri Lanka. Do you know on September 21st, in these different places where there is war, 2,100 children, 21,000 children are vaccinated on September 21st. 21,000. He is able to create a situation where people can go in and bring health and goodness to children. This past year, something profound happened. The Taliban in Afghanistan and leaders of different tribes were able to sign an agreement that on September 21st, they would not big bang. It's going to happen one moment, one experience, one little hope at a time. Today, for the close of this message, we're going to continue on the Advent journey. Just like last week, we shared messages of hope. This week, we're going to share messages of peace in just a few words. As these people share their experiences and have a willingness to name what kind of brought them to their knees or what brought them into a situation where they had to give up and let God take over, I hope it gives you an opportunity to do the same, to be mindful of where peace is needed in your life and where indeed you can turn it over to God. We're continuing on the journey. God of grace and love, to you we give thanks for the gift of peace, as real as the air that we breathe. I ask that you be with all of us as we continue on this journey towards inner peace, daily peace, and world peace. Let us know that with you indeed, all things are possible.